Sarah Chen wiped chalk dust from her fingers as the final bell rang at Lincoln Elementary School, watching her third graders scramble toward the door with their backpacks bouncing against their small shoulders. To her colleagues, she was simply Mrs. Chen, the quiet art teacher who had transferred from California 2 years ago. They saw her patient smile when dealing with spilled paint, her gentle way of encouraging shy students, and her preference for eating lunch alone in her classroom while grading papers. What they didn't see were the scars hidden beneath her long sleeves, the way her eyes automatically scanned every room for exits, or how she could calculate distances and angles with mathematical precision that had nothing to do with elementary school curriculum. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 32, Sarah had perfected the art of invisibility. She drove a modest Honda Civic, lived in a small apartment near the school, and spent her evenings painting watercolor, landscapes that never quite captured the intensity of the memories she was trying to forget. Her neighbors knew her as the helpful teacher who always volunteered for school events and never caused any trouble. None of them suspected that Sarah Chen had once been Staff Sergeant Sarah Michelle Rodriguez, one of only 17 women to ever complete Navy SEAL training. The transition from special operations to elementary school had taken 3 years of careful planning. New identity, new background, new personality crafted with the same precision she had once used to plan covert missions in hostile territory. The official records showed that Sarah Rodriguez had died in a classified operation in Somalia. The woman who emerged from that mission had been broken in ways that military psychologists couldn't fix, carrying survivors' guilt that made sleep impossible and hypervigilance that made civilian life a constant challenge. Teaching had become her therapy. The innocence of children, their genuine laughter, their uncomplicated problems that could be solved with band-aids and encouraging words. For 2 years, she had built a life around routine and predictability, far from the world of midnight insertions and life-or-death decisions. The closest she came to her former life was during the rare moments when her military training would surface, like the time she had instinctively positioned herself between her students and a stranger who had wandered onto the playground, or when she had noticed potential security vulnerabilities in the school's layout that she quietly reported to the principal. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered to the school office with official Navy letterhead that made Sarah's hands tremble as she opened it. Commander James Mitchell requested her presence at Naval Special Warfare Training Facility, Corinodo, for consultation on training program modifications. The letter was carefully worded, mentioning her background in educational methodology and psychological development, but Sarah recognized it for what it truly was. Someone had found her. Her first instinct was to run. She had done it before, disappearing from one life and creating another with the skills that special operations had taught her. But something in the letter's phrasing, the specific mention of training program failures and the need for innovative approaches to military education, sparked curiosity that overrode her survival instincts. After 2 years of hiding from her past, perhaps it was time to confront it. The drive to Coronado took 4 hours, 4 hours of internal debate and memory management. Sarah had convinced her principal that she needed personal leave for a family emergency, a lie that came easily after years of constructing her civilian identity. As she approached the familiar gates of the naval facility, her body began reverting to military posture almost involuntarily. Shoulders back, chin up, eyes alert to every detail of her surroundings. Commander Mitchell was younger than she had expected, probably in his early 40s, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of years in the field. His office overlooked the training compound where new SEAL candidates were running through obstacle courses under the brutal California sun. When Sarah entered, he stood with the practiced courtesy of a career military officer, but his eyes held a calculating quality that suggested he knew more about her than his letter had revealed. The conversation began formally, with Mitchell explaining that the Navy was experiencing unprecedented failure rates in their special operations training programs. Candidates were arriving with superior physical conditioning and technical knowledge, but lacking the psychological resilience necessary to complete the program. Traditional methods of mental conditioning were proving inadequate for a new generation of recruits who had grown up with different expectations and communication styles. Sarah listened carefully, her trained mind analyzing not just the words, but the subtext beneath them. This wasn't really about educational consultation. Mitchell was evaluating her, testing her responses, looking for something specific that he hadn't yet revealed. When he mentioned that the Navy was particularly interested in understanding how individuals who had successfully completed special operations training later adapted to civilian careers, she realized that her carefully constructed new identity had been compromised from the beginning. The revelation came during what Mitchell described as a facility tour, but what Sarah recognized as an interview disguised as observation. As they walked through the training areas, past candidates struggling with tasks that had once been routine. For her, Mitchell began asking more pointed questions about psychological conditioning and stress management. His queries weren't academic. They were tactical, focused on specific scenarios that corresponded exactly to the kinds of situations that had led to her own breakdown. The moment of truth arrived when they reached the combat simulation facility. A group of instructor candidates were struggling with a hostage rescue scenario, making tactical errors that would have resulted in civilian casualties in real-world application. Sarah watched their fumbling attempts at coordination with growing frustration, her professional training warring with her desire to remain invisible. When one of the candidates made a decision that would have endangered the entire team, her resolve finally cracked. The critique that followed was delivered in the calm, precise tone that had once commanded respect from special operations teams around the world. Sarah broke down their tactical errors with surgical accuracy, explained the psychological principles behind effective team coordination under stress, and demonstrated threat assessment techniques that weren't in any manual. The transformation from quiet art teacher to military expert was so complete that the candidates stopped their simulation to listen. Commander Mitchell's reaction was exactly what Sarah had expected and dreaded. The slight smile that played across his face told her that this entire scenario had been orchestrated from the beginning. Her presence here wasn't consultation, it was recruitment. The Navy hadn't lost track of Sarah Rodriguez. They had been monitoring her civilian life and waiting for the right moment to bring her back into service. The discussion that followed in Mitchell's office was frank and direct in the way that only military conversations could be. The Navy needed instructors who understood both the technical requirements of special operations and the psychological challenges that modern candidates faced. Traditional drill instructor methods were producing graduates who could perform tasks but couldn't adapt to unexpected situations or work effectively with diverse teams. They needed someone who could bridge the gap between military tradition and contemporary educational approaches. Sarah's unique combination of special operations experience and civilian teaching expertise made her invaluable in ways that she had never anticipated. Her 2 years of working with children had taught her patience, communication techniques, and methods of building confidence in individuals who were afraid of failure. These skills, combined with her military background, represented exactly the kind of innovative approach that the Navy's training programs desperately needed. But accepting Mitchell's offer would mean abandoning the life she had carefully constructed, returning to a world that had nearly destroyed her, and confronting the memories that had driven her to hide in the first place. The safety of her elementary school classroom, the predictable challenges of teaching 8-year-olds, the simple satisfaction of helping children learn to express themselves through art, all of it would disappear if she agreed to return to military service. The decision would reshape everything she had built in the past 2 years, forcing her to choose between the security of invisibility and the possibility of finding purpose in the very world she had tried to escape. Sarah's first day at the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility began at 0400 hours, a wake-up call that her body remembered even after 2 years of civilian schedules. She had accepted Mitchell's offer with conditions that surprised him, demanding civilian contractor status rather than reactivation of her military commission. The arrangement allowed her to maintain some distance from the hierarchical structure that had contributed to her original breakdown while still providing the expertise the Navy desperately needed. The instructor housing was spartanly furnished but comfortable, a significant upgrade from the cramped quarters she had endured during her own SEAL training years earlier. As she unpacked the few belongings she had brought from her teachers' life, Sarah found herself caught between two identities. The watercolor paints and children's artwork seemed absurdly out of place next to the tactical gear and military documentation that had emerged from storage boxes she hadn't opened in years. Her official title was Educational Development Specialist, a bureaucratic designation that meant nothing to the seasoned instructors who viewed her arrival with barely concealed skepticism. To them, she was an outsider brought in by command to implement theoretical changes to training methods that had produced elite warriors for decades. The fact that she was female, civilian-dressed, and spoke with the measured cadence of an elementary school teacher only reinforced their assumption that she represented another misguided Pentagon initiative doomed to failure. Master Chief Petty Officer Robert Kane embodied their collective resistance. A 26-year veteran with 4 combat deployments and a reputation for breaking candidates who weren't worthy of the SEAL designation, Kane viewed Sarah's presence as a personal insult to everything he had dedicated his career to building. During their first formal meeting, he made his position clear with the blunt directness that senior enlisted personnel had perfected over generations. The training methods that had forged America's premier Special Operations Force didn't need modification by someone whose most recent combat experience involved preventing playground conflicts between third graders. Kane's assessment was delivered with professional courtesy but unmistakable contempt, his weathered face expressing the kind of dismissal that Sarah had learned to recognize during her own military service. Women in special operations, regardless of their qualifications, faced constant questioning of their competence and commitment. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Torres, the facility's executive officer, represented a different kind of challenge. As one of the few female officers in the special warfare community, Torres had survived by being twice as competent and 3 times as aggressive as her male colleagues. Sarah's civilian status and educational background triggered Torres's defensive instincts, creating an immediate rivalry based on the assumption that Sarah represented weakness disguised as innovation. The candidates themselves presented the most complex dynamic. This current class of potential SEALs represented the highest academic credentials in the program's history, with advanced degrees in engineering, computer science, and international relations. They approached training with analytical mindsets that sometimes interfered with the instinctive responses that combat situations demanded. Traditional intimidation tactics that had motivated previous generations often backfired with these candidates, creating psychological barriers rather than building resilience. Sarah's first week involved observation and assessment, sitting quietly in the back of classrooms and training areas while taking detailed notes that she shared with no one. Her presence was tolerated but largely ignored, dismissed as another administrative requirement that would eventually disappear without impact. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The instructors continued their established routines, while the candidates struggled with failure rates that had prompted Sarah's recruitment in the first place. The breakthrough came during a particularly brutal week of training known as Hell Week, designed to eliminate candidates who lacked the mental fortitude necessary for special operations. Sarah watched from the sidelines as Master Chief Kane subjected the class to sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, and psychological pressure that had broken stronger men in previous cycles. By the third day, 8 of the original 24 candidates had voluntarily withdrawn, their academic achievements proving inadequate for the demands of elite military training. The remaining candidates were showing signs of the psychological fragmentation that Sarah recognized from her own training experience. Unlike previous generations who had responded to punishment with increased determination, these highly educated recruits were becoming paralyzed by self-doubt and analytical overthinking. Their superior intelligence, rather than providing advantages, was creating mental loops that prevented the kind of instinctive decision-making that special operations required. Sarah's intervention came during a navigation exercise that had devolved into complete chaos. The candidates, operating on minimal sleep and maximum stress, had become so focused on avoiding mistakes that they were unable to make any decisions at all. Master Chief Kane's increasingly aggressive encouragement was producing diminishing returns, creating a downward spiral that threatened to eliminate the entire class before the week's conclusion. Without seeking permission from Kane or Torres, Sarah stepped into the training area and began working directly with the paralyzed candidates. Her approach was unlike anything they had experienced during their military training. Instead of shouting criticism and demanding immediate compliance, she began asking questions that forced them to analyze their decision-making processes and identify the psychological barriers that were preventing effective action, the technique. She employed combined military tactical thinking with educational psychology principles she had developed while teaching children. By breaking complex problems into smaller, manageable components and building confidence through incremental successes, she began rebuilding the candidate's ability to function under pressure. Her voice remained calm and supportive while maintaining the underlying authority that commanded respect from individuals accustomed to hierarchical structure. Master Chief Kane's initial reaction was predictable fury. This civilian contractor was undermining established training protocols and interfering with procedures that had proven effective for decades. His confrontation with Sarah was loud, public, and designed to reassert his authority over training operations while demonstrating to the candidates that her methods were not officially sanctioned by the command structure. Sarah's response surprised everyone present, including herself. Instead of backing down or appealing to Commander Mitchell's authority, she challenged Kane directly on the basis of results rather than protocol. The current training methods were producing unacceptable failure rates among the highest quality candidates the Navy had ever recruited. Traditional approaches that had worked with previous generations were proving counterproductive with contemporary recruits who required different motivational techniques. The confrontation escalated when Kane demanded that Sarah demonstrate her qualifications to modify training procedures that she had never personally completed. His challenge was issued publicly in front of both instructors and candidates, designed to expose her as a theoretical expert without practical experience. The implication was clear: until she could prove her own competence under the same conditions she was attempting to modify, her recommendations were worthless. Lieutenant Commander Torres supported Kane's position, viewing the challenge as an opportunity to eliminate what she perceived as interference from an unqualified outsider. The candidates watched with fascination as the two senior instructors aligned against the quiet woman who had been helping them navigate their psychological barriers. The tension in the training area became palpable as Sarah realized that her carefully constructed civilian identity was about to be completely shattered. The test that Kane proposed was deceptively simple: complete the same navigation course that had paralyzed the candidates, but under the additional pressure of time constraints and instructor harassment, designed to simulate combat stress. Sarah would be required to demonstrate not only technical proficiency, but also the kind of mental resilience that special operations demanded. Failure would result in her immediate removal from the facility and the discrediting of her training modifications. Sarah accepted the challenge without hesitation, a decision that surprised even Commander Mitchell when he learned of the arrangement. Her calm acceptance of Kane's test revealed the first glimpse of the military professional who existed beneath her civilian facade. As she prepared for the demonstration that would determine her future at the facility, Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had once defined her existence in the special operations community. The navigation course itself was designed to be completed by teams of candidates working together under normal conditions. Kane's modification required Sarah to complete it alone in half the allocated time, while being subjected to the kind of psychological pressure that typically broke candidates who had been training for months. The course included obstacles that required significant physical strength, technical challenges that demanded specialized knowledge, and decision points that tested judgment under extreme stress. As Sarah approached the starting point, her civilian clothes and elementary school teacher persona seemed absurdly inappropriate for the military challenge ahead. Master Chief Kane and Lieutenant Commander Torres positioned themselves where they could observe every aspect of her performance, confident that her inevitable failure would restore the natural order of their training environment. The candidates gathered as unofficial spectators, curious to see whether the woman who had helped them overcome their psychological barriers possessed the practical skills necessary to validate her theoretical knowledge. The transformation that occurred when the exercise began was so complete that several observers initially failed to recognize Sarah as the same person who had been quietly taking notes from the sidelines for weeks. Every movement became precise and economical, every decision made with instantaneous confidence that eliminated hesitation and second-guessing. The gentle teacher who had patiently guided elementary students through art projects had vanished, replaced by a special operations professional whose competence was immediately apparent to anyone with military experience. Her navigation techniques went beyond textbook procedures, incorporating field expedients and tactical shortcuts that could only have been learned through actual operational experience. Master Chief Kane found himself unconsciously noting her methods for potential incorporation into future training, his professional instincts overriding his personal animosity as he recognized expertise that exceeded his own in several critical areas. The obstacle that shattered every preconception about Sarah Chen appeared halfway through the navigation course. A 30-foot vertical wall with minimal handholds, designed to require teamwork and specialized equipment for successful completion. Previous candidates had spent considerable time developing strategies and coordinating their efforts to overcome this barrier. Sarah approached it alone, without equipment, facing the expectation that she would be forced to request assistance or admit defeat. What happened next left the assembled observers in stunned silence. Sarah executed a series of movements that transformed the supposedly impossible obstacle into a routine challenge. Her technique combined rock climbing expertise with parkour elements and military tactical climbing methods, creating fluid motion that made the ascent appear effortless. Master Chief Kane found himself unconsciously holding his breath as she navigated sections of the wall that had defeated much larger and stronger candidates. Her descent was even more impressive, utilizing controlled rappelling techniques without ropes that demonstrated absolute confidence in her physical abilities and spatial awareness. When she landed and continued toward the next checkpoint without pausing to acknowledge the achievement, Kane realized he was observing someone whose capabilities exceeded anything he had encountered in over 2 decades of special operations training. The technical challenges that followed revealed the depth of Sarah's expertise in areas that extended far beyond basic military training. Communications equipment, that typically required multiple candidates working together, was operated with single-handed efficiency that suggested extensive field experience. Map reading and tactical decision-making were executed with the kind of intuitive understanding that came from years of operational deployment rather than classroom instruction. Lieutenant Commander Torres found her skepticism evaporating as Sarah demonstrated competencies that few active duty SEALs possessed. The navigation techniques being displayed weren't from standard training manuals. They represented field-tested methods developed through practical experience in hostile environments. Torres's own special operations background allowed her to recognize the difference between theoretical knowledge and hard-earned expertise acquired under fire. The candidates watching from designated observation points were witnessing their understanding of their instructor completely reconstructed. The patient woman who had helped them overcome psychological barriers was revealing herself as someone whose operational experience dwarfed their own limited exposure to military training. Her calm demeanor during their classroom sessions suddenly made sense as the composure of someone accustomed to making life-or-death decisions under extreme pressure. Commander Mitchell had positioned himself where he could monitor both Sarah's performance and the reactions of his training staff. The transformation he was observing exceeded his expectations, even though he had recruited Sarah specifically because of her classified special operations background. Watching her navigate challenges that regularly defeated his best candidates, Mitchell realized that his facility had inadvertently acquired one of the most qualified instructors in the entire special warfare community. The final obstacle presented the ultimate test of tactical thinking under pressure. A simulated hostage rescue scenario that required split-second decision-making while managing multiple variables simultaneously. Previous candidates had approached this challenge with careful planning and methodical execution, often taking several attempts to achieve acceptable results. Sarah's approach was entirely different, demonstrating the kind of adaptive thinking that separated elite operators from conventional military personnel. Her tactical assessment was completed in seconds rather than minutes, identifying threats and opportunities with the speed that only came from extensive combat experience. The hostage rescue was executed with precision that made the complex scenario appear routine, each movement calculated to maximize effectiveness while minimizing exposure to simulated enemy fire. Master Chief Kane watched in growing amazement as Sarah demonstrated tactical proficiency that exceeded most of his veteran instructors. When the exercise concluded, Sarah's time was not just superior to previous candidates. It established a key new facility record that would be difficult for future classes to match. More importantly, her performance had been accomplished without the visible strain or exhaustion that typically accompanied such efforts. She appeared ready to immediately tackle additional challenges, suggesting reserves of physical and mental endurance that went beyond normal human limitations. Master Chief Kane's world had been fundamentally altered by what he had just witnessed. The civilian contractor he had dismissed as a misguided Pentagon initiative was revealing herself as the most qualified special operations professional he had ever encountered. His confrontational approach to testing her credentials had backfired spectacularly, exposing his own limitations while demonstrating her extraordinary capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Torres approached Sarah with the careful respect that one warrior accorded another after witnessing superior performance. Her previous hostility had been replaced by professional curiosity about the background and experience that had produced such exceptional competence. The revelation that Sarah possessed operational credentials that exceeded her own created a mixture of admiration and uncomfortable self-reflection. The candidates who had struggled with the same obstacles that Sarah had effortlessly conquered were experiencing their own psychological transformation. The instructor who had patiently helped them overcome mental barriers was revealing herself as someone whose achievements made their own aspirations seem modest by comparison. Rather than feeling intimidated, however, they found themselves energized by the possibility of learning from someone with such demonstrated expertise. Sarah's response to her performance was characteristically understated, treating the record-breaking achievement as a routine training exercise rather than a dramatic demonstration of superior abilities. Her calm demeanor following the challenge reinforced the impression that she operated at a level where such accomplishments were expected rather than exceptional. The quiet confidence that had characterized her teaching approach was revealed as the natural bearing of someone accustomed to excellence under pressure. Commander Mitchell's debriefing session that evening took on entirely different dimensions than originally planned. Instead of discussing theoretical modifications to training procedures, the conversation focused on practical implementation of methods that Sarah had personally validated through operational experience. Her civilian contractor status suddenly seemed inadequate for someone whose qualifications exceeded most active duty personnel in the special warfare community. The investigation into Sarah's background that followed revealed the carefully constructed layers of her civilian identity. Staff Sergeant Sarah Michelle Rodriguez had been listed as killed in action during a classified operation in Somalia. Her death reported to protect her extraction from a mission that had gone catastrophically wrong. The woman who had emerged from that operation had been too psychologically damaged for continued military service, requiring complete identity reconstruction for her own protection. Her transition to elementary school teaching had been part of an elaborate therapeutic process designed to help special operations personnel recover from severe post-traumatic stress. The patience and empathy she had developed while working with children had actually enhanced her military capabilities, providing psychological tools that complemented her tactical expertise. Her 2 years of civilian life had not weakened her special operations skills. They had refined them in unexpected ways. The revelation of Sarah's true identity created immediate complications for the training facility. Her classified background required security clearances that didn't exist for civilian contractors, while her demonstrated capabilities made her invaluable to training programs that desperately needed her expertise. Commander Mitchell found himself navigating bureaucratic challenges that threatened to remove his most qualified instructor due to administrative technicalities. Master Chief Kane's relationship with Sarah underwent complete transformation as he grasped the magnitude of her operational experience. The confrontational approach that had defined their initial interactions was replaced by professional respect for someone whose combat credentials exceeded his own. His resistance to training modifications evaporated when he realized they were being proposed by someone with superior qualifications and proven results. The candidates benefited immediately from Sarah's revealed expertise, gaining access to training methods that had been refined through actual combat experience rather than theoretical development. Her combination of advanced tactical knowledge and educational psychology created learning opportunities that traditional military training couldn't provide. Failure rates that had prompted the facility's training crisis began declining as candidates gained confidence from working with an instructor whose competence was unquestionable. Sarah's own psychological healing accelerated as she found purpose in sharing her hard-earned expertise with the next generation of special operations personnel. Teaching children had shown her the satisfaction of helping others develop their potential. Training future SEALs allowed her to contribute to national security while processing her own combat trauma. The integration of her military and civilian experiences created a unique professional identity that served both her personal recovery and institutional needs. The watercolor paintings that had decorated her civilian apartment were replaced by tactical diagrams and training schedules that reflected her return to military purpose. However, the patience and empathy learned during her teaching years remained integral to her approach, creating instructional methods that combined operational expertise with genuine concern for candidate development. The broken warrior who had fled to elementary school teaching had evolved into someone whose capabilities exceeded her original military service. 6 months after her dramatic demonstration, Sarah had been formally reinstated to active duty with a promotion that reflected both her operational achievements and her contributions to training innovation. The Naval Special Warfare Training Facility had become a model for other military institutions, demonstrating how combat experience could be enhanced through educational psychology to create more effective learning environments. Her story became legend within the special operations community, illustrating how apparent weakness could mask extraordinary strength and how civilian experiences could enhance rather than diminish military capabilities. The quiet art teacher who had hidden her identity for 2 years was now recognized as one of the most effective military instructors in the entire defense establishment. Her journey from breakdown to breakthrough, inspiring others who struggled to find purpose after combat trauma. The promise of purpose that had drawn her back to military service had been fulfilled beyond her expectations, transforming personal healing into institutional improvement that would benefit countless future warriors. The Pentagon briefing room fell silent as Admiral Patricia Hawkins reviewed the quarterly training reports from naval special warfare facilities across the United States. The statistics were unprecedented in the history of elite military training, showing success rates that had improved by 47% at Coronado, while maintaining the rigorous standards that define SEAL qualification. The architect of this transformation sat quietly at the conference table, her civilian clothes replaced by the dress uniform of a newly promoted lieutenant commander. Sarah's reinstatement had required intervention at the highest levels of naval command, with classified hearings that examined both her operational history and her contributions to training innovation. The bureaucratic challenges of reserving someone officially listed as killed in action paled beside the strategic value of her demonstrated expertise. Admiral Hawkins had personally overseen the administrative process that returned Staff Sergeant Sarah Rodriguez to active duty as lieutenant. Commander Sarah Chen, acknowledging both her previous service and her civilian professional development. The transformation of the Coronado training facility had attracted attention from military leadership worldwide, with delegations from allied nations requesting access to Sarah's training methodologies. Her integration of combat psychology with educational theory had created techniques that enhanced learning effectiveness while reducing the psychological casualties that had plagued elite military programs. Traditional military training had focused on elimination of weakness. Sarah's approach emphasized development of strength through understanding and adaptation. Master Chief Kane had become one of her strongest advocates, incorporating her methods into his own instruction while maintaining the physical standards that define special operations training. His initial resistance had evolved into professional admiration as he witnessed results that exceeded anything achieved through conventional approaches. The candidates graduating under the modified program demonstrated not only technical proficiency, but also psychological resilience that prepared them for the complex challenges of modern warfare. Lieutenant Commander Torres had requested transfer to Sarah's training division, recognizing opportunities for professional development that didn't exist elsewhere in the special warfare community. Her own combat experience provided valuable perspective for refining Sarah's methods, creating collaborative approaches that combined multiple operational viewpoints. The rivalry that had initially characterized their relationship had transformed into partnership focused on continuous improvement of training effectiveness. The candidates themselves represented the most significant validation of Sarah's innovations. Previous classes had graduated with technical competence, but often struggled with the transition to operational assignments that required adaptive thinking under pressure. The current graduates displayed confidence and problem-solving abilities that operational commanders noted immediately upon their assignment to active teams. Field reports consistently praised their performance in complex scenarios that had challenged previous SEAL classes. Sarah's personal quarters reflected her evolution from hiding civilian to proud military professional, decorated with commendations that acknowledged both her combat service and her contributions to military education. The watercolor painting. Supplies that had once represented escape from military life were now supplemented by tactical manuals and research papers that explored the intersection of combat psychology and learning theory. Her apartment had become a workspace where she developed training concepts that were being adopted throughout the defense establishment. The speaking engagements that followed her promotion took Sarah to military academies and war colleges where her story inspired both cadets and seasoned officers. Her presentations combined tactical expertise with personal reflection, demonstrating how apparent failure could be transformed into extraordinary success through persistence and adaptation. The narrative of the elementary school teacher who revealed herself as an elite warrior resonated with audiences who faced their own challenges in balancing personal fulfillment with professional duty. Research institutions began requesting Sarah's collaboration on studies examining post-traumatic stress recovery and career transition for special operations personnel. Her unique experience bridging military and civilian worlds provided insights that purely academic researchers couldn't achieve. The therapeutic value of teaching had implications for veteran support programs throughout the military community, suggesting new approaches to helping combat veterans find purpose after service. The international attention culminated in an invitation to address the NATO Special Operations Conference in Brussels, where military leaders from 26 nations gathered to discuss training standardization and effectiveness measurement. Sarah's presentation on psychological conditioning and adaptive learning received extended applause from an audience that included some of the world's most experienced special operations commanders. Her methods were being translated into multiple languages for implementation across allied military forces. Commander Mitchell's career had been transformed by the success of his facility under Sarah's influence, earning him promotion to captain and assignment to Pentagon planning positions that would influence special operations training policy. His decision to recruit Sarah, despite her civilian status, had proven to be the defining achievement of his military career. The risk he had taken in bringing her to Coronado had paid dividends that extended far beyond his original facility. The documentary film crew that arrived to chronicle the training revolution found themselves documenting something unprecedented in military history. The story of a woman who had hidden her elite credentials while teaching children, only to emerge as one of the most influential military educators of her generation, captured public imagination in ways that traditional military success stories rarely achieved. Sarah's journey from breakdown to breakthrough illustrated possibilities for personal transformation that inspired audiences far beyond the military community. The book deal that followed would eventually become a bestseller, not because of its military content, but because of its universal themes of resilience, adaptation, and finding purpose after trauma. Sarah's writing combined tactical precision with emotional honesty, creating a narrative that appealed to readers struggling with their own challenges of reinvention and recovery. The royalties from publication were donated to veteran support organizations, continuing her commitment to helping others navigate difficult transitions. The marriage proposal came from Dr. Marcus Williams, a combat psychologist who had collaborated with Sarah on research projects examining stress response and learning effectiveness. Their professional relationship had evolved into personal partnership based on shared understanding of military service and commitment to helping others achieve their potential. The wedding ceremony at the Naval Academy Chapel was attended by candidates, instructors, and military leaders who had been influenced by Sarah's work. The honeymoon trip to New Zealand provided Sarah with her first extended leave from military duties in over a year, offering time for reflection on the journey that had brought her from the depths of post-traumatic crisis to the pinnacle of professional achievement. The quiet moments hiking through landscapes that reminded her of the watercolor paintings she had once created allowed processing of emotions that military life rarely accommodated. The peace she felt was earned through years of struggle and validated by meaningful contribution to something larger than herself. The pregnancy announcement 6 months later added new dimensions to Sarah's life planning, requiring consideration of how to balance the demands of elite military service with the responsibilities of motherhood. The Navy's commitment to retaining her expertise resulted in flexible assignment arrangements that allowed continued contribution to training development while accommodating family obligations. Her example inspired policy changes that better supported military families dealing with similar challenges. The daughter born 18 months later was named Hope Michelle Chen Williams, carrying family names that honored both her military heritage and her parents' shared commitment to helping others overcome adversity. Sarah's transition to motherhood was observed by military leadership interested in understanding how combat veterans adapted to civilian family responsibilities. Her success in balancing elite professional demands with parenting duties provided models for supporting other military families. The promotion to commander came with assignment to the Pentagon's Special Operations Policy Division, where Sarah's influence extended beyond training programs to strategic planning and resource allocation. Her office overlooked the Potomac River, providing views that reminded her of the Nevada classroom where she had once graded elementary school artwork. The contrast between her past hiding and current prominence illustrated the potential for transformation that inspired her continued dedication to helping others achieve their goals. The legacy Sarah was building extended beyond her personal achievements to systematic changes in how the military approached training, psychological support, and career development for special operations personnel. Her story had become institutional memory that influenced policy decisions affecting thousands of service members. The elementary school teacher who had once feared exposure was now shaping the future of elite military training through innovations that balanced traditional standards with contemporary understanding of human development. The annual ceremony at Coronado, where new SEAL graduates received their tridents, included recognition of instructors whose contributions had shaped the program. Sarah's name was permanently inscribed on the facility's honor wall, acknowledging her role in transforming training methods that had influenced an entire generation of special operations professionals. The recognition represented not just personal achievement, but validation of the principle that apparent weakness could mask extraordinary strength when properly understood and developed. The quiet satisfaction Sarah felt watching new graduates demonstrate capabilities enhanced by her training methods validated the difficult journey from breakdown to breakthrough that had defined her adult life. The promise of purpose that had drawn her back to military service continued to provide motivation for pushing the boundaries of what was possible in human development and military effectiveness. Her story would inspire others facing their own challenges of recovery, adaptation, and the courage to reclaim their true potential. The crisis that would define Sarah's ultimate legacy began with a seemingly routine training exercise that spiraled into international incident. A joint training operation between American and Allied special forces in the Mediterranean had gone catastrophically wrong when communications were compromised and a live hostage situation developed aboard a commercial vessel that had been infiltrated by actual terrorists. The training scenario had collided with real-world threats, creating a complex emergency that exceeded the capabilities of conventional response protocols. Commander Sarah Chen received the emergency briefing while attending a NATO conference in Rome, her expertise in crisis psychology and adaptive training making her indispensable to the developing situation. The commercial cruise ship Adriatic Star had been taken by a sophisticated terrorist cell that had somehow learned about the training exercise and used that knowledge to stage their own operation. 300 passengers were held hostage while Multiple National Special Forces units struggled to coordinate response efforts, hampered by language barriers and conflicting operational procedures. The terrorists had specifically targeted the training exercise, recognizing an opportunity to maximize international attention while exploiting the confusion that would result from mixing simulated and actual operations. Their leader, identified as Viktor Petrov, had extensive military background and intimate knowledge of special operations tactics that suggested inside information about Western training methods. The psychological profile that emerged painted a picture of someone seeking to demonstrate the inadequacy of international military cooperation while advancing his own political agenda. Sarah's involvement escalated when initial rescue attempts failed due to coordination breakdowns between American, British, French, and Italian Special Forces teams. Each unit operated according to national protocols that weren't fully compatible with Allied procedures, creating gaps in communication and tactical execution that the terrorists exploited effectively. The complexity of managing multiple elite units with different training backgrounds and operational cultures highlighted fundamental problems in international military cooperation that Sarah had been studying for years. The request for her direct involvement came from Admiral Rebecca Morrison, who had been monitoring the situation from the Pentagon's Crisis Management Center. Sarah's reputation for solving impossible training challenges had evolved into recognition. As someone who could bridge cultural and operational differences that paralyzed conventional command structures, her unique combination of tactical expertise and psychological understanding made her qualified to address both the immediate crisis and the underlying coordination failures that had enabled it. The flight to the operational command center aboard the USS Ronald Reagan positioned Sarah at the heart of a crisis that was being broadcast live to global audiences. The terrorists had established communication links that allowed them to narrate their actions while demonstrating the apparent helplessness of the world's most elite military forces. Viktor Petrov's psychological warfare was as sophisticated as his tactical planning, designed to undermine public confidence in military effectiveness while advancing his broader ideological objectives. Sarah's initial assessment of the situation revealed systematic exploitation of weaknesses in international cooperation, protocols that she had identified during her research but hadn't anticipated being tested under such extreme circumstances. The terrorist leader had studied Western special operations extensively and was using that knowledge to stay ahead of rescue attempts while maximizing psychological pressure on both hostages and responding forces. His background suggested training that matched or exceeded most conventional special operations programs. The breakthrough in Sarah's analysis came when she recognized patterns in Petrov's tactical decisions that corresponded to specific training methodologies she had encountered. During her classified operations, the terrorist leader wasn't just using general knowledge of special operations. He was applying techniques that suggested exposure to highly classified American training programs. This revelation transformed the crisis from a hostage situation into a potential intelligence breach with national security implications, extending far beyond the immediate rescue operation. Her recommendation to establish unified command under American leadership faced resistance from Allied commanders who were reluctant to subordinate their elite units to foreign authority. The political sensitivities involved in international military cooperation were complicated by national pride and institutional traditions that prioritized sovereignty over effectiveness. Sarah found herself navigating diplomatic complexities that required skills developed during her civilian teaching experience as much as her military background. The solution she proposed combined tactical innovation with psychological manipulation, designed to exploit Petrov's own expertise against him. By broadcasting false information about rescue plans while implementing entirely different strategies, Sarah created confusion that would neutralize the terrorist leader's insider knowledge. Her approach required precise coordination between multiple Allied units, operating under unified protocols she developed specifically for this crisis. The psychological component of her strategy involved using Petrov's military background to predict his responses while manipulating his expectations through carefully crafted misinformation. Sarah's understanding of combat stress and decision-making under pressure allowed her to design scenarios that would overwhelm even sophisticated opponents. The techniques she employed had been refined through years of training development, but never tested against adversaries of Petrov's caliber. The tactical execution required coordinating simultaneous operations by teams that had never worked together under the extreme time constraints imposed by deteriorating conditions aboard the cruise ship. Sarah's training innovations were adapted in real time to bridge operational differences between units while maintaining the element of surprise essential for success. Her role evolved from consultant to operational commander as the complexity of the situation demanded unified leadership that transcended national boundaries. The hostage rescue operation that Sarah orchestrated became a textbook example of international military cooperation, executed under impossible circumstances. Multiple entry points were breached simultaneously while psychological pressure was applied through coordinated disinformation campaigns that confused the terrorists while reassuring the hostages. The precision required to coordinate such complex operations across language and cultural barriers demonstrated the effectiveness of Sarah's training methodologies under ultimate testing conditions. Viktor Petrov's capture alive provided intelligence opportunities that revealed the full scope of the security breach that had enabled his operation. His interrogation uncovered a network of compromised personnel within allied military organizations who had been providing classified information to hostile forces for years. The investigation that followed Sarah's successful rescue operation expanded into the largest counterintelligence operation in NATO history, ultimately identifying and neutralizing dozens of security threats across member nations. The personal cost of the operation for Sarah was significant, but manageable thanks to the psychological tools she had developed during her recovery from earlier combat trauma. The intensity of commanding life-or-death operations while managing international political pressures tested her resilience in ways that surpassed her original Special Operations Service. However, the therapeutic foundation built during her civilian teaching years provided stability that allowed her to process the experience without the breakdown that might have occurred earlier in her career. The media attention following the successful rescue operation thrust Sarah into international prominence that she neither sought nor particularly welcomed. Her preference for working behind the scenes was complicated by public interest in the story of an elementary school teacher who had emerged as one of the world's most capable military commanders. The narrative captured global imagination while raising uncomfortable questions about how elite capabilities could remain hidden within seemingly ordinary individuals. The documentary films and book deals that followed provided platforms for Sarah to advance her theories about human potential and the importance of comprehensive support systems for individuals transitioning between military and civilian careers. Her message resonated with audiences struggling with their own challenges of identity and purpose, extending her influence far beyond the military community that had initially benefited from her expertise. The promotion to captain that accompanied her Medal of Honor citation represented recognition at the highest levels of military command for contributions that had fundamentally changed approaches to training, crisis management, and international cooperation. Sarah's unique combination of tactical excellence and psychological insight had proven invaluable in situations that conventional military thinking couldn't address effectively. The establishment of the Chen Institute for Crisis Leadership at the Naval War College provided Sarah with a permanent platform for developing and disseminating her approaches to complex problem-solving under extreme pressure. The institute attracted students from around the world, seeking to understand how individual excellence could be scaled to institutional effectiveness. Her teaching methods combined rigorous academic analysis with practical application that prepared graduates for leadership challenges across multiple domains. The marriage of Sarah's military expertise with her educational background created new fields of study that influenced policy development at the highest levels of government. Her research on adaptive leadership and crisis psychology was incorporated into training programs for diplomatic, intelligence, and emergency management personnel who faced challenges similar to those encountered in military operations. The interdisciplinary approach she pioneered became a model for addressing complex 21st century security challenges. The retirement ceremony that marked the end of Sarah's active military service was attended by leaders from around the world who had been influenced by her innovations. The quiet elementary school teacher who had once hidden from her past was being honored for contributions that had enhanced global security, while inspiring countless individuals to pursue their own potential despite apparent obstacles. The private moments following her retirement allowed Sarah to reflect on a journey that had taken her from the depths of post-traumatic crisis to the pinnacle of military achievement, while never losing sight of the human connections that provided meaning to professional success. The watercolor paintings that had once represented escape from military life were now complemented by portraits of the students, trainees, and colleagues whose lives had been touched by her dedication to helping others achieve excellence. The foundation that Sarah established with her accumulated honors and royalties focused on supporting veterans and their families during the challenging transitions between military and civilian careers. Her own experience provided a template for others seeking to rebuild their lives after combat trauma, while finding new ways to contribute their unique skills to society. The program's success rates exceeded anything achieved by conventional veteran support services. The grandchildren who would eventually learn about their grandmother's extraordinary career would grow up understanding that apparent weakness could mask extraordinary strength, and that the most important victories were often won by helping others achieve their potential. Sarah's legacy extended beyond her military achievements to encompass a lifetime of service that had touched thousands of lives across multiple continents and professional domains. The final entry in Sarah's personal journal, written on her 75th birthday, reflected on the unexpected paths that had led from a traumatic breakdown to a life of unprecedented achievement and service. The promise she had made to herself during those dark days of recovery had been fulfilled beyond anything she could have imagined, proving that resilience and determination could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles when combined with willingness to help others along the way. The memorial service that would eventually honor Sarah's life was attended by representatives from dozens of nations whose military forces had been influenced by her innovations. The elementary school teacher who had once feared recognition had become a figure whose contributions to human development and international security would be studied for generations. Her story continued to inspire others facing their own challenges of recovery, adaptation, and the courage to reclaim their true potential. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.